Football with friends is fun as hell. My name is Alex Dunlap here with Cody Carpentier and joined by our guy, Anna Naduri at Naduri NFL, our resident Ohio State Buckeye maniac. As we are here, man, we're just like, 48 hours out. It's just unbelievable that this crash course that we had kind of talked about with Anna in the preseason and during fall camp that we thought Texas could end up in with Ohio State. It's like here we are, just right on the precipice of it. Anand, welcome to the Great Lone Star State, brother. How are you enjoying Dallas?
It's cold, but I mean not Midwest cold for us. I mean we're kind of used to it. It's warmer than when I left Chicago, man. But everyone's been great here, and should be a great game 2 nights from now.
All right, let me ask you the first question, and Cody and I will just kind of tag team you here, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. This is something that I've been wondering about, and I want to take this. I want to talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. and I want to talk about Jeremiah Smith. All right, and I want to take this year out of it. And look, for people who might not know, we know Anand because he works at he does the stuff at Player Profiler, and Cody and I cover the NFL draft with the Player Profiler dudes every single year. We've known Anand. We've been covering the last 3-4 drafts with Anand. So we were there around whenever Marv came out, right? You had the insight on him. You also go to all these practices. You go to all these games. You go to the fall camp. Apparently, they get better access to guys like you up there than they give the media down here to the Texas football team, judging by all the pictures you have with all these dudes. But so Anand is a guy that has a unique perspective, from kind of being around the program, but also from the evaluation side, just doing all the draft prep work that we sort of do too. So I just want us to forget about the first year in Arizona, right? Just whatever it was. I don't care. I mean, you have takes on it. If you want to talk about that, that's fine. But whenever Marv came out, we talked about him like a certified alien and a freak, right? Now we're talking about Jeremiah Smith in the same way. How do you compare the two players? What is the compare and contrast those two guys?
Yeah, we've been blessed to see a lot of really good ones. So,
well, yeah,
I mean, run through the list of them, right? And going into last year, we kind of understood that Marvin Harrison Jr. was going to be the standard for Ohio State wide receivers. If you want a true alpha X wide receiver out of the box, guaranteed to be able to beat press man, solid in zone, can do anything that you want to do, he was your guy. And then, right around December of last year, the Ohio State beat started to do something that they don't normally do. And they're like, hey, there's this kid in South Florida. And we had heard about him for years and years and years. Obviously, being a number one wide receiver and being the number one overall player in your class are not the same thing. To be a receiver that gets rated that highly, a whole lot of people have to think that you're very special. And we started hearing things, and there were the Julio Jones comparisons, and there were all kinds of these crazy – in our world, right, there are certain things that you never do. No quarterback is Brady or Manning. No tight end is Gronk. There are certain comps that you never make. One of those is Julio and Megatron. There is no wide receiver that you ever comp to them because they hit their ceilings, and they were physical freaks, and they were technicians, and they were everything that you'd want in a wide receiver. And so when people started saying these things to me, I kind of laughed it off, and I was like, yeah, he's going to be incredible here. But we just had Marvin Harrison Jr. And then I got to see him. So when I went out to practice in August, I was sitting there just jaw on the floor. There's no way that this dude was in high school last year. You watch guys that are in college. It's almost more of like a college basketball comparison than even football, because it breaks your mind. Freshmen don't do this. We've seen a lot of really talented freshmen, wide receivers specifically. Ryan Williams this year, Bama, was awesome. But physically speaking, he's an NFL wide receiver one tomorrow. Marv was not that when he got here. He refined his game a lot. I don't think anybody would say that anyone worked harder than he did while he was here. But Jeremiah is just a different cat, man. That's a out-of-the-box NFL wide receiver one at the age of 19, and they're just aren't many of those that we've ever had.
But all this, I mean, but okay, I mean, you look at him and you're like, oh gosh. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like you look at him and you see it. I'm just, I'm, I don't know. Maybe maybe
it's
Cody. It's like I guess I'm not doing as good a job explaining to on and sort of what I've been thinking about this. It's like, is he? Are we prison? Is there just any chance that we're prisoners of the moment with him, with the way that he's just come? No, it's
No.
like
so
No,
I remember like literally having this. I mean, Anand's been on 3 times now this season because we've pretty much manifested this matchup towards the end of the season. Kind of knew that these were the 2 best teams in football. And I just remember that one conversation in August when I think that the column or the report had like just came out and they had just started asking questions to like Ryan Day and stuff. And he was like, like I'm just going to keep it in my pocket what this Jeremiah Smith kid is, right? We talked about it. We were like, what is it? What is he? What is he? And you just came on, you're like, yep. And I know we're bringing up Marv, but like to me, Marv is much more.
I only bring him up because of the size comparison, and it's harder to
100%.
compare him to like Olave or Garrett Wilson or
100%. But like Marv to me is a little more of like that T. Higgins feel, where he's lankier. I call it the beta alpha. Like he's an alpha, but he's also got like these beta tendencies where he's not quite like a marauder. Like when I think of like a Jamar Chase, like things like that, right? And to me, like to a certain extent, I think the one feature that I think changes Jeremiah Smith from a Marv is that he's got some Jackson Smith and Jigba in it. He's got that dynamic ability thing that I think Jamar Chase has. I think Jackson has it. Like Terry McLaurin has it to a certain extent when you're talking about all Ohio State guys. I think he's Marv's size with those. Is that kind of that's kind of where I sit with it.
Yeah, it's insane to call someone Marv plus because of how good he was.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what you're looking at here. You're talking about, and I hate the word. We've talked about this at the draft many times. I hate when anyone uses the word generational because it gets thrown around way too often. But this is what generational actually looks like. Watching what Jeremiah Smith did to Tennessee and Oregon. That is what a generational prospect looks like at 19 years old. There aren't many of them. There have been maybe 3 or 4 of them that I can remember. But I mean, when you look at him and what he can do, it's almost to the point where you're trying to find words to describe all of the things that he can do. Because the Jamar Chase that we saw was 20 years old. The Marvin Harrison Jr. we saw was 21 years old. All of these guys that we're talking about where you're like, wow, that is an NFL wide receiver one today. He's an unbelievable talent. He can do everything that you would ever want in a wide receiver. This guy's 19 years old as of like a week or 2 ago. I mean, you're talking about a kid right now in a man's body that is absolutely bodying 5th and 6th year DBs that sole job is to stop him. It doesn't make any sense. And I know that all the things that, all 3 of us are saying about him, just they don't even register because we've never seen a wide receiver like this, not at least in the last 15 years.
Hold on, wait. You feel like I mean, so you're just like you think he's already goated. It's just like it's already done. He's already goated. It's just that's that game over.
Alex, he has more. If he catches 5 balls and 5 touchdowns the rest of this season, he will have more composite total in his freshman season than Terry McLaurin did in his entire Ohio State career.
Well, McLaurin, I mean, that's a really good stat. But McLaurin, what I mean,
that's pretty big.
Good. It's good. That's good. Yeah. Can I say we can ask another? We can change the subject, or we gonna keep it on? Because
no, it was about Jeremiah.
Okay, so go ahead then.
I was going to say, because you've been to these games, you've been to a handful of games this year. You were at camp, and I don't want to say he underperformed for parts of the season because he didn't. He had output. Like he had a great game against Western Michigan early in the year. He had 70, 80-yard games throughout the season. He had 100 yards against Oregon for the first time in a conference game. but he hadn't really like exploded, and they also hadn't really like featured him really a ton, in my opinion, for the rest of the year. And they didn't really have to. They got the running backs, they got Ibuka, et cetera. You can keep on going on with that. But against Indiana, 3 receptions, 34 yards. Against Michigan, 5 for 35. He's had some down game. Penn State, 4 for 55. Nebraska was another game at 3 for 70. Like those few games, they were able to keep him kind of under wraps from a yak perspective, from like an explosive play perspective. Have you noticed like a true difference? I guess like has he broken through that glass ceiling that like we were like, well, I think he can get there. He got there, obviously against Tennessee and Oregon, but did you notice anything like throughout the season, like a maturation process, or was it more of just like the offense changing?
I think some of it, there's truth to both sides. I think the offense changing, obviously, to run through him more was a big part of it. But also, when you're that physically gifted and you're going against dudes that are 3 and 4 years older than you, you're trying to figure out what you can get away with sometimes. I would liken it to kind of one of, Pat Mahomes is one of the freakishly talented quarterbacks that we've seen. Josh Allen, where they're early on in their career, you can see the talent, you can see the flashes. They're still incredible, but you're also watching them test the parameters of what they can get away with at this level. Because obviously those aren't high school DBs anymore, even though, a lot of the time he's making them look that way. I think there was an adjustment period for sure. We knew how special he would be, but it wasn't just day one. He was this. I think it took the full season in the maturation process of kind of figuring out what Will Howard wants to do, figuring out how Chip wants to use him. But man, it kind of from day one, you saw, whoa, this is what he could be. And you're kind of now seeing the final version of what he can be, at least this year, because God knows 2 or 3 years from now what he's going to look like. I mean, it boggles the mind to think about, but special player.
Well, all right. So clearly he's caught fire. And, Ohio State right now is the team that everybody's saying is kind of the hot team and stuff like that. But it was only, the Michigan game was 2 games ago. And, talking about firing Ryan Day and all this stuff. Were you ever in on that? Were you ever in on the fire Ryan Day?
No, I was never in on the fire Ryan Day thing, only because I think people don't realize just how difficult it is to win 10 games anywhere on a consistent basis. People are very upset about the postseason in Michigan, and they should be. At Ohio State, losing to Michigan is inexcusable. If it's Texas losing to OU 4 straight years, the postseason success matters, obviously, and winning 10 games matters, but people are going to put a premium on that game, as they should. To me, the difference there specifically is you've watched elite programs suffer when they pull the ripcord too soon. And the guy that he gets compared most often to by, the historians of the sport is Kirby Smart, where it took him a long time and he had to break through. Well, there is a distinction there. Kirby inherited something that was very different than what Ryan Day inherited. Ryan Day inherited a turnkey Ferrari that can win you a national title. Kirby had to build that. And so I think it's a little bit of a difference where you're looking at, people want national titles immediately. And you look at how long it's taken coaches to get there. This is his first head coaching job, right? Like, we don't think of it that way because it's Ohio State and he's had the success that he's had, but this is his first head coaching job ever. I'm not trying to make excuses for it. I've been as angry as anybody, but I don't know that you can go out there and find somebody that's a better fit for your program, that's a better leader for your program than he is. And so I was never a part of that. But yeah, I mean, you've seen me out there as angry as anybody for it.
All right. So what do you? Oh, do you agree that Ohio State's looked better these last 2 weeks than they've looked all season? So
I mean, anybody with eyes.
What do you attribute that to? How can they look so bad versus Michigan and then just turn it around like this?
It's because there are really 3 things. The first one is the marriage of Chip Kelly's run game and Ryan Day's pass game. They tried way too hard early in the season to lean into being a run first team. And while Josh Simmons and Seth McLaughlin were in there before they got hurt, the center and the left tackle, both whom might have been, first, second round picks this year.
I think Simmons is still
they
a
were
first-round
okay doing
right?
that, and they got away
He's
with
still gonna go first round.
Yeah, he should be. He should be. But once you lose those two guys, the captain of your offensive line and McLaughlin, and then you're arguably your best player on your offensive line and Simmons, a lot of that changed, and they kept trying to bang their head against a wall. They looked clunky against Nebraska. There were times that they looked bad against several other teams, and then obviously you lose to Oregon, you lose to Michigan. And a lot of people were just wondering, why does this look so bad? You have so much talent. And even though the O-line was somewhat depleted, you've recruited for this, right? You have this generational freak at wide receiver. You have two other first-round picks probably behind him. You've got two running backs that NFL teams are dying to rip off your roster tomorrow. How in the world is this result possible? And the answer to me is they leaned too much into trying to win the way that Michigan had beaten them the last 3 years, and in the middle, and running it Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant to me is an insane idea, no matter who you are, but especially if you're Ohio. Yeah, but especially if you're Ohio State, right? Down two linemen. I didn't get it. I was there for that, and there were a lot of really angry people walking out of there. But to answer your question, I think they finally figured out that this is a team where you have to pass to run, as opposed to trying to run to pass. And that's been the difference. If you've noticed, they've won a lot on counter after the explosive Jeremiah Smith touchdowns or Emeka Egbuka touchdowns early in those games. And it's those counter runs that are ripping off 15, 20, 30 yards after that are really breaking those games open.
So is it can you rank in order the importance of the offensive skill guys between the two backs and the three wide receivers? What is it? What's the order of operations?
Yeah, to me, I think it's right now it's probably Jeremiah and Emeka, and then you've got Trey and Q in whatever order you want, and then Carnell Tate and G. Scott in that order. But it's been game by game. Trey has been significantly better in the playoffs than he was in the regular season. The regular season seemed to be a lot more Q. They're blessed enough to have both. So it's kind of take your pick. But I think Travion is probably right now the better of the two. Going forward, who knows? But it's a week by week thing. I think they've been happy to feed whoever's hot, and right now it's 32, so they've been giving them the ball.
Up in Buckeye land, there's got to be some confidence radiating, as we can kind of see across America right now. I think they're 5.5 or 6 point favorites in the game, ballooned up really quickly when it opened. If you do listen to the national media, it's all Ohio State right now, and everyone talking about obviously Jeremiah Smith, the running game, the Ohio State defense. Texas's offensive line's been banged up with Banks and Williams injured. Quinn's inconsistencies. That's all the narrative that you kind of hear out there. Is there is there any thought of losing this game for Ohio State people right now? And two, is there anything that even worries them when they do sit back and look at this game? Like,
or does anybody worry it could be a trap? You could be walking into a big trap on it. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Look, if you sit there and you look at it from a national media perspective, that's one thing. Ohio State fans are they'd favor Ohio State against the 85 Bears tomorrow. Like, that's not I don't think that we can even get into that discussion, because that's just fans being fans. But from media perspective, unbiased, if you look at the teams that have given Ohio State trouble, it's the Nebraskas of the world, it's the Michigans of the world. And yeah, sure, you can write that up as, they ran the wrong offense, they hadn't figured it all out yet. But there's one common theme through all of the teams that Ohio State struggled with, and it's their interior defensive line has been excellent. And that's where I think the Texas side of things can swing. If you look at how Texas plays specifically, Sark's opening two scripts are brilliant. If you fuck around early in a game, you're down 14-0 really, really quickly. And that allows Pete and that defense to go get after you real quick. They've been in a lot of game scripts like that where they just tsunami somebody. And Ohio State's done that the last 2 weeks, but that's not how they've done it the entire year. you have to really worry about the game script that you're in, because you want to throw when you can and run when you can. You don't want to have to throw or have to run in given spots. And they haven't really been in that yet, right? Since Michigan, they haven't been in a spot where they've had to throw or they've needed necessarily to get a run on a 3rd and 2 in a dire spot. I do not think that this is going to be a blowout. I think that line is adequately set. It may end up as a 10, 13 point win for either side, but these are probably the 2 best rosters in America at the moment. And we said that in the preseason. We thought Georgia had a shot to get there. We thought Oregon had a shot to get there, but these are the last 2 standing of those 4. And we said in the preseason, your national title will come from Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon. And here we are. And I think that this is basically your de facto national championship game, because I don't think that the other side of this bracket, as great as they are and as physical and tough and special as both of those teams' runs have been, they're just not matching up both in the trenches and in the perimeter.
The other side of the bracket is like comparing meat that you buy at the grocery store to meat that you buy at Texas Beef Traders. It really, really is. I mean, you're talking about Ohio State and Texas. That's the Texas Beef Trader side of the whole bracket, right? Just we're talking about the best of the best, non-GMO, vaccine-free, steroid-free, right? Anand, steroid-free, correct? No cockamamie hormones, none of this stuff, man. Just Ranch Direct, straight from Mason, Texas. My buddy. My neighbor Mo, he just went down to Texas Beef Traders for buying stuff for the game yesterday. Cody, you'll love this. He got a bunch of Wagyu beef and Wagyu bacon, and we are going to
that Wagyu bacon.
I'm taking down eggs from the. I'm taking down our own fresh eggs from the chickens here. We're gonna crack fried eggs on top of it, and we're gonna eat burgers from Texas Beef Traders and watch the game. You can be doing this kind of thing, guys. You just go to Texas Beef Traders. You get 10% off when you mention that you heard about them here on Football with Friends, and you can pick up the boxes that Cody and I have. We also have the Football with Friends beef jerky. You guys have sold that out twice, man, but we get it back in stock. It was supposed to be today. They got steaks in today, but Darren swears that the beef jerky is coming in tomorrow. So we know you guys want it. We're gonna have it back in the jalapeno garlic and the cowboy blend tomorrow. So make sure and check that out. And go to Texas Beef Traders, texasbeeftraders.com. Get your 10% off. It's going to be cheaper than the grocery store once you get your 10% off. And if you can't make it into Lakeway, just call Darren and talk to him. Make an order and he'll just bring it to your house. I don't know how much easier it can be than that. Texas Beef Traders, texasbeeftraders.com. All right, Cody put up the little scroller underneath us, the Football with Friends email account. That's fwfemails@gmail.com. If you have questions about that, we did have some questions about the beef jerky and stuff like that, and I had to get back with our guy Tom about it. But yeah, that's where you get us. If you have any questions, want to sponsor the show, want to just give us any feedback, we'd love to hear it. And thanks to everybody who's in here right now. Cody, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your next question with the Texas Beef Traders ad.
No, you're all good. Don't even blink. The one thing you brought up was interior defensive line, and Vernon Broughton and Alfred Collins, like Texas, that was maybe, if not the most worrisome thing Texas fans had going into the season. It was one of the top worrisome things that they had, was what that defensive tackle position was going to look like. I think that everybody's been happy with what they've gotten. They obviously fit the bill as far as their size, and their play has been adequate this season. But where the talent is coming from is from the edge, and that's where they're dominating. It's the best trio in the sport right now as far as causing pressure. It's the best in the tournament. It's the best anywhere. And the one thing that I wanted to ask you about was this offensive line for Ohio State, because obviously you brought up McLaughlin and Simmons both being down. McLaughlin, the transfer from Alabama, who played in the college football playoff last year, famously had a bad snap, and Simmons projected to be a first-round pick. And I look, so like I said, Texas has 3 edge rushers that are tops and pressures right now as the trio. And I look at the Ohio State offensive line, and this is really the one spot that I think on the Ohio State team, I think Texas can take advantage of, because like you said, you're trying to pass to open up the run. That's kind of where they've shifted. And obviously passing includes getting the ball to Igbuka, getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith, getting the ball out of Will Howard's hands. And I just wonder, is there like worry, like actual worry, because I haven't watched a butt ton of Ohio State. I haven't watched every single snap of every single game. Maybe I should. But when I look at the grades, at least from the Cockamamie PFF and we here,
which can be very cockamamie,
we
which can be very cockamamie.
We talk about PFF a lot, but we do also always caveat it with very cockamamie because it's a grade. It's not a stat. It's a grade from someone's eyes. We think maybe, and from those grades on, and the offensive line is, to be kindly, not good, and from allowing pressures to, if you just rank all the offensive linemen that were in the tournament, the 12 teams that were in this tournament, Ohio State has 3 of the bottom 12 in pressures allowed and worst pass blocking grades. 3 offensive linemen, the center, the guard, and the tackle. Tigra and the other tackle, which is Josh Fry.
Is that bad on it?
Oh, Taggart been something this year.
Something like that or something good?
Something bad. Yeah, it's not great. But you know, you guys
ask is just that are you worried about this offensive line? Because from a Texas side, I think that's the one place that, like you said, pass to run, get the ball to Jeremiah and Egbuka. Is there any thought that Texas's defensive line could completely, not just the defensive tackles, but against this offensive line?
Because the interesting thing here, we had this thumbnail from from like last week or whatever, where it was like, I forgot what was it, Cody's like superstars, and it was like, so Texas's freshman version of Jeremiah Smith is on the defensive side of the ball, and his name's Colin Simmons, and like he's the Texas alien, right? Yeah. So like that's the dude who I wouldn't say, Ant Hill has been the heart of the defense, but that guy's been just the freshman that's come in that is, I mean, both these guys are on every freshman All-American team. They're all everyone's aware of these two. I'm pretty interested to hear about how you think that these guys match up, especially with the guards, if they're going to be doing the stunts and the twists and the stuff that they like to do with Colin to get him isolated.
Yeah, so the thing to me is, we've had this conversation before, probably more in the past, and not even necessarily on this show, but O-line has been a weak link theory. I've always felt this way. You're only as good as your worst O-lineman. And Ohio State struggled with that in the middle of their season as they kind of trying to find their best 5 after those 2 went down. Shout out Donovan Jackson, who's awesome and decided to shift from left guard to left tackle and was great there. But yeah, I mean, of course, going into the season, the offensive line was the biggest question on Ohio State's team, kind of the same way that you guys were worried about defensive tackle. Throughout the early part of the season, they really came together and everything was good. Then you had those 2 injuries. Things went south for a little bit. And then they kind of came back together post-Michigan. And you're seeing talent play to talent's level. And I don't know how long they can get away with doing that. Only because, Oregon's defensive line is super talented. Tennessee's defensive line is super talented. But they're not talented 4 across. It's not like you have 4 guaranteed NFL starters across both those lines. Whereas Texas does absolutely have edge rushers galore where your tackles are going to have to hold up on islands. And the funniest part about it is when you look at how Texas structures their defense, the things that they can do, there are a lot of things where, especially if they get up, like we were talking about early, Sark gets that quick touchdown on that first drive. They can put you in a lot of really tough situations just with all of the different schematic things that they can do. You talked about the twists and the stunts, but it's also the sub packages where, I don't know that anybody has in Mukubo or Barron. When you talk about Jeremiah Smith, obviously freak wide receiver. And we talked about how, he's incredible for being 19 years old. Those guys have been there and done that. And when you're talking about how a team could possibly take away this dominant wide receiver, Texas has, in theory, all of the pieces to do it. It's just nobody with all the pieces to do it has played Ohio State yet. And so you're kind of seeing strength on strength, best on best, where now the weakness on the Ohio State side is definitely the offensive line. And that is, to Cody's point, kind of where the dam would break if you were to get to a spot where Ohio State really does struggle to move the ball.
Obviously, I mean, any team, I think with both, and this is an interesting thing that CES brings up in the chat saying Pete Kwiatkowski and Chip, they probably. I mean, those guys have faced off before. Like I don't know like who that's an advantage for, but that's a
It's
subplot
just
that
that's
I
guys
even
being
thought of.
guys.
Yeah. But what that kind of threw me off. Oh yeah. So what I was gonna say is whenever so there's the stuff about the defensive line, and you mentioned that Texas does as far as what they do have. I mean, they have got Cody. Wait, has Alfred Collins accepted a Senior Bowl invite, or is it just Broughton so far?
Just Broughton so far.
But Collins is going to get one, and
Collins has one from last year.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, they got 2 Senior Bowlers on the interior, and then they got the really good edge rush guys. So that'll be an interesting one to follow. I think that is going to be about as troublesome as what would you do if you were Texas about handling these receivers? Would you double one of them? Would you just?
I would make sure that Makuba is the safety on the side of Barron, and I would have Barron shadow Jeremiah Smith the entire day. If I'm going to lose, I'm going to lose because Ibuka and Tate and everybody else decide to do their thing. It's just the difference, if you look at it offensively, is we have number 4 and other teams don't. And so if you can find a way, he's going to get his. It's kind of like Marv last year, but if you can let him get his in the situations that are, 1st and 10 as opposed to 3rd and 15, I think that goes a long way, because I don't think everybody wants to, make this out to be some kind of shootout. I don't think so. I think both defenses are the better units on both teams. As scorching hot as Ohio State's running, how many times, 2019 LSU was the last team that we really saw, maybe 2020 Bama, or, you could argue 2021 Georgia, but I wouldn't really put them in that class, where you saw them buzzsaw elite team after elite team after elite team over and over and over again. It just doesn't happen. You can't ask your team to go A+ performance after A+ performance. Those A+ performances are rare, and you've gotten back-to-back ones from Ohio State. What happens if you get their B+ game, right? What if this is a game into the second half? What if this is a game into the third quarter? That's waters. Those are waters that are untested, other than like a Penn State and an Oregon earlier this year, where, Texas has had to win a lot more gritty games than Ohio State has. And you wonder, what does a fourth quarter really close game look like? Because one side has all of the, this talent that they brought in over the last year, and that they, kept from the NFL draft in 2024 or 2023 into this year. And the other side has, one of the best defenses in America. They have a quarterback that's been there and done that in that uniform, in Quinn Ewers. And, you're asking, one of the big things that I keep going back to is Texas's O-line has just stonewalled people. I mean, if you go back and look at the play that I look at is that 4th and 13 that, basically saved the season. If you go back and watch that, Arizona State didn't have anybody within 15 feet of Quinn Ewers. I mean, that line just built a wall. So if you can't get to him, he's going to sit there and pick you apart all day. And I think that's where Ohio State can get into trouble, is when you look at, how these game scripts can unfold. Nobody's considering the idea that Texas throws a punch first and gets up on this team. And instead, they're assuming that Ohio State's going to do what they've been doing, which is get out to 21-0 leads on elite teams over and over and over again. I just don't know that that's sustainable, and I think they're probably in for more of a fight than they think.
Cody, what do you want to talk to? Because I have one other question, but I thought you were going to maybe want to go through some of those that's super blue chip stuff. Let me just ask this, and then you can do that or ask whatever else. As far as as far as getting out to early leads, as far as the way that the script can change, how much did that affect the Ohio State getting after Dylan Gabriel like 8 times the second time versus 0 the first? Like, is that? I mean, obviously, it had to be to getting off to the big lead, right? Was there something that allowed the defense to? I mean, that's just as simple as like, yeah, you're off to a big lead. They can pin their ears back and go after the dude. I mean, is that it? Like what changed from the first to the second game?
Yeah, they stripped the defense entirely apart after Oregon game number 1. I mean, they tore it down to the studs and rebuilt it as much as you can in the middle of the season. A lot of it was, 4 down, our guys are better than your guys. We're going to sit back and too high and, live and die by our athletes are better than your athletes. And then, after that, and it was a gritty process. They grinded through it for a little bit, but they went back to a lot of the Jim Knowles 3 high that he ran at Oklahoma State with 4 down hybrid defense with Caleb Downs basically playing middle linebacker. And it changed life for them because one super special player, obviously, I think that of the players on Ohio State's team, if it's not Jeremiah Smith, that's the best player. It's Caleb Downs.
Yes.
But from there, there's just not another one, right? Like you can build a defense around that guy in a way that you can't really build defenses around anybody else because he's a special player and they decided to do it and it's worked out the way that it's worked out. I mean, they had Nico running for his life. They had Dylan running for his life. And, in the second half, I thought Dylan put together a lot of really solid drives and really moved the ball, but, too little too late at that point. Does that change if, the game script is a little different? Maybe, but I did not see that level of pressure that we've seen against Tennessee and against Oregon otherwise this year. That's just a different level. They're doing something different. And sometimes it's just 5 stars living up to 5-star billing. And, there have been many that have been critical of Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau not living up to their recruiting profiles. But in the last 2 weeks, they sure have.
Is that number 33, Jack Sawyer?
33 is Jack Sawyer. Yeah.
He got a little bit tilted about the whole flag, the whole flag claim.
Yes, he did.
if I think that there could be some people feeling a little bit tilted during court, whether Texas wins or loses, I feel like there's going to be some hair raising points in this football game coming up, and to be able to help you with that, man, I would at least go and stock up with our friends over at Specs.
No matter what you're needing, Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets.
Thanks again to Specs, Wine, Spirits, and Finer Foods. Thanks to Poncho Outdoors for being such great sponsors as well. I can't believe it. Finally, a day where nobody on here is wearing Poncho gear. It's like it's a.
What are you wearing?
What?
You're not wearing poncho?
No. This is a different hoodie than my sister gave me. But they need to get some ponchos back in stock. I mean, they need to get some ponchos back in stock. They're all sold out, man. People love them too much. It's crazy. So as soon as they get more, I can't keep wearing the same 2 hoodies every day, Cody. I can't do it. I got to wash them. But yes, thanks so much to Poncho Outdoors. Great sponsors, and certainly love having those guys on board. And if you want the shirts, just go get them. There's no promo codes because they always just sell out of shirts. So why get promo codes? Cody, what do you got for Anand?
That's the art of business, I guess. Yeah. Anand, there's this innate thought of all this talent on Ohio State, and I guess, in my opinion, not a lot of thought of giving Texas a lot of credit for having talent. I think Rivals put out a post today showing all the 4 and 5 stars that are in this game, and then also in the Penn State Notre Dame game, which pales in comparison. And if you go break it down, it's really not close. Like, these 2 teams are so far and above, and we've talked about that from a talent perspective all season. But when you do look at it number by number, you can, Ohio State clearly has the. I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. Ohio State clearly has the head and shoulders lead in super blue chip players, which is on Rivals classified as a 6.0 grade and higher. So it's a high 4-star or 5-star prospect. Ohio State has 22 of them on the roster. 12 are starting. Texas has 15 on the roster. 8 are starting. That's right. That 55-53% threshold for both teams. Ohio State has 6 on each side of the ball. Texas 5 on offense, 3 on defense. The thing I noticed, though, especially for Ohio State, is 3 of those guys are backup quarterbacks: Devin Brown, Aaron Norland, and Julian Sayin. You also have Miles Graham, Jason Moore. There's a boatload of guys that are 6s that don't really get a lot of work on the field. So when you do break it down by like the starting lineups and people getting, a majority of the snaps, like in the last 2 games, They're really tightly contested side by side, but there's one guy. It's like when I say tightly contested, it's like literally 0.01 points apart from each other. But there's one guy that's not that high on that list, and his name's Will Howard, the quarterback that has yet to beat the University of Texas. And the last 2 games, I know a lot of credit's been given to Jeremiah Smith, a lot of credit's been given to the defense, scoring, Chip Kelly, all this other stuff. But the one thing I did notice or read today was that in these last 2 games, so for the regular season, Ohio State has run 12 personnel, which is 1 quarterback, 2 tight ends, and 2 wide receivers 15% of the time in the regular season. In these 2 playoff games, they've run it 43% of the time, which is a 28% uptick.
Hold on, say that again. What did you say?
28% uptick from 15% in the regular season playing 12 personnel to 43% in these 2 playoff games, where they've turned into this de facto buzzsaw, right? From 12 personnel, he's thrown the ball to Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, G. Scott, Trey Henderson.
Hold on, they're running more 12?
This is all according to ESPN Analytics and True Media. The thing I noticed, though, from that is Will Howard, his QBR. So this is the stat. In 11-year history of the CFP, a quarterback has produced a total QBR of 97.7 in a game 8 times. 8 times total in 11 years. You can probably think of the names off the top of your head. Burrow's done it a couple, etc. Yeah. Howard had a 98.7 against Tennessee, a 97.7 against Oregon. He has 2 of those 8 performances. Is that really what we've come to expect from Will Howard? Have you seen the maturation of Will Howard?
No,
like when I think of him, it's the running rush ability. He's 6'5", 235. I don't think of somebody that's dicing up defenses. Is there again, these are 2 different things here. It's 12 personnel, and then you got this guy starting to become like an elite quarterback. Do you see that? Do you believe that? Is he getting enough credit? Are we undershadowing, expecting from Will Howard?
I think in a lot of ways, when you look at what Will is, it's a production of everything that's around him. It's not necessarily that Will Howard has turned into this magnificent quarterback overnight. It's, Jeremiah Smith has developed throughout the year. You have Emeka Egbuka, who would have been a first-round pick last year. You have, G. Scott, who's finally grown into his own at tight end.
One of my favorite guys that one of my favorite guys that I saw at that Navy All-American game. He's he's playing mainly tight end now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's a true tight end. There's no wide receiver in him anymore. He's hand in the dirt tight end now. Yeah. So, I mean, you're looking at all these guys, and they're asking him to play point guard. And, when they brought him in here, I think that was the idea. I think when Notre Dame brought Riley in, that was the idea. We don't need the quarterback to carry the offense. This is not 2022 CJ Stroud, where it's, hey, buddy, go save the program week by week against great teams. They've built really well around him, and he's played well, but I think that's a little bit over the top in terms of how I would grade out his performance. QBR is QBR, and they have the metrics that they have. I thought he's played very well. I thought he's played A to A plus in both games, but Will Howard's A to A plus and Joe Burrow's A to A plus are probably not comparable. And so I will scrap any of those comparisons because there's only one.
All right, so I'll put you on the spot here on him before we let you get out of here. And we appreciate you taking the time. Also appreciate the over 700 people watching live right now. And as we always say, 95% of our audience watches afterwards. So what's up to you guys who are watching on Thursday morning? So pleased to have you here with us. But special thanks always to the chat for being here and with your lively comments and all the rest of it. We really do love having you guys, and it's because of y'all that the show's growing so much. So thank you all. If you could please like the show and subscribe to the channel while you're here, that would really be helpful. All right, Anand. So if we get one more from me, and then we'll get one more from Cody, and then get you out. You got to tell me now. So give me one stat or one thing that happens, or if you tell me this one thing after the game's over, it's Friday night and the game's over, and this happened from the game. And it could be from a player. It could be from a final score, or not a final score, but like this team scored this many points. Give me one situation where if you heard that, you would say, oh, all right, Ohio State definitely won that football game. And one where if you heard it, you would say, all right, Texas definitely won that football game.
Yeah, I think that the easiest one to go to. So I'll give you two because I think the first one's kind of a cop out, but it's the truth. Quarterback turnovers from both sides. They've both been fantastic when they haven't turned the ball over and have been catastrophic when they have. So obviously that's a given, whether it's Howard or Ewers in that spot. But if you can tell me which defensive line gets more pressures on the quarterback, if I can have that stat, I think I would have a pretty good idea of who won the game, only because I think Will Howard has the ability to run, and we've seen Quinn run at times too. But if Ohio State can't get pressure, I mean, we saw what Ewers did at the end of that Arizona State game. And if Texas can't get pressure, we've seen what Will did to Oregon and Tennessee. So it's mainly a how comfortable is your quarterback game for me. And I think that, both O-lines will do a pretty decent job. Both D-lines are excellent. But if I could have the stat of, who has more pressures in the game, I think I'd have a pretty good idea of who wins.
What if I told you that Arch Manning had to throw over 15 passes?
Ooh.
Would you say that means that Ohio State won big?
Ooh.
And the Quinn got pulled?
I don't know. I would, if you just gave me a box score and told me that Arch Manning threw 17 passes in this game, I would assume one of two things. One, assuming Quinn didn't get hurt, obviously, I would assume that the game was close enough that the Texas defense kept the game close enough that Sark at some point felt, hey, like Quinn isn't giving us enough on offense. We need to put Arch in there to give us a shot to even score points here after that initial script. Or at some point you're just chasing points and they don't think that Quinn could give them enough to get there. Those are the two scenarios that I think that Arch throws, 15 to 17 passes. But I think that, not that jersey sales haven't gone crazy, but you want to talk about all time, framing of the moment of the man arriving. Arch Manning in a playoff semifinal game at the Cotton Bowl might be one of
I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be happening, but just kind of curious.
One thing that I think is I don't know if it's funny or it's random or not, but Alex, we're so engulfed into everything Texas. We hear everything that comes out from Sark. We hear everything from the players and everything. And I was at a Christmas party the week before the Arizona State game, and there was a guy he's an Arizona State alum. He went to the Arizona State game, and he kept telling me the one thing that worries him the most is that they're going to pull Quinn in the first quarter, and Arch is going to end up playing it. Like he was just adamant that he's like the thing I'm most scared about Texas is they're going to play Arch. I just know they're going to play Arch, and I'm like, they're not going to play Arch. Like, they're just not going to do it. And it made me think of that and this is nothing against Jan, and it was like what you just said. There was like the defense kept this game close enough that Sark could potentially pull Quinn because Quinn can't score. It's just like that's the same theory that he said, and just like it's just funny from being like engulfed into just Texas predominantly outside of like the scouting perspective, and then hearing like, I mean, that's not, you don't hear Sark every single day, right? So you wouldn't like get the vibe that like that he's not.
He would never.
He's not doing, unless it's like that situation against Georgia. Or like you said, they get down 4 scores and they just can't score.
If you told me that Arch had like any more than like 5 passes, I say, man, Quinn, like things went real bad.
Yeah.
Here's a different question. I'm going to flip this on y'all. Same spot. He watched his mentor do it. You're down 20-0 at halftime. Is it time to pull the plug and say, hey, it's Arch time, ride or die, whatever happens, we're doing this?
I mean, dude, I'll tell you what.
You watch Saban do it?
Drive in the third quarter.
Yeah, just to see. And if he got that thing going, I think it would just be like, look, we were down 20. We were just going into the next season anyway. Arch is going to be the quarterback next season anyway. Let's just get next season started a little bit earlier and let's just see what happens. If he, came out and I think that that's the one situation where you might see it, but you would never be able to get Sark to admit that he would ever even think about it. And I would say that it's still kind of a 50-50 that he would even do that.
He bit a dude's head off in the press conference the day before that Georgia game, and it was like a hypothetical. It was like, if this happens, will we see Arch?
It was our guy Anwar, man. Anand knows him.
This one was before Georgia. Remember, it was
that was Thomas Jones.
He was like, "Will we see Arch if this happens?" And he's no.
He goes, I don't even understand that question. It's a stupid question. Next question.
There you go. That's what he said. Sorry, that's what he said. Yeah. But he basically said no, that's not happening. And then he ended up doing it in the game. But it's like but since then it's been pretty like matter of fact. This is Quinn's team.
Do you got any final take question from Anand before we get him out of here? Or
I want a truthful hand on the Bible score from on and on here. I want I want a score with a percentage of like
place your hand on the Bible through the
percentage of belief that this is in that score. So I want to score with a percentage belief in the score.
Yeah, I think this game ends up lower scoring than people think. And conversely, I think the other game ends up higher scoring than people think. I will go 24-23. And I think that the reason that I'll go 24-23 is Texas's red zone issues over and over and over again. I think Sark will find ways to move the ball, but it's one of those situations where at the end of the game, the field goals ultimately hurt. I think there's a chance that they have more offensive yards than Ohio State in this game. But it's the kill shots from this offense are what really get you. It's the 40-yard Quinshawn run down the sideline. It's the 60-yard Jeremiah Smith touchdown that, other teams against Ohio State need to get. I think that's going to be where the difference is made up. I would say, 60%. I feel confident that Ohio State would win that game. And it's a much closer game than people want to give it credit for, simply because you've seen A+ game and A+ game from Ohio State, and you've seen, Texas basically coast on their B game the entire season. Nobody has seen what Texas's A+ game looks like. And if there will be a time for Quinn Ewers and or Sark and or that entire team to give you an A+, this might be it. And if we get A+ versus A+, I'm going to say this. I think we're going to get an all-time college football classic.
Game of the decade.
That's all we can hope for, man. Game of the decade. Anand, love you, brother. Thanks so much for coming on, dude. I'm sure we'll be texting during or I don't know. I might be too angry to be texting during the game. Or you might be too angry. I'm sure
how's service out there? We'll find out.
We'll end up at least getting to see you're gonna go to you gonna try and go to the any of the All-Star games or the Combine or anything?
I'll be at the Senior Bowl. I'll be at the Super Bowl. I'll be at the Combine. And I will be at the draft.
Okay, so we'll see you at the Senior Bowl and Combine and all that before we see you at the Draft House in Tampa, brother. But always awesome to have this time of year when we can all kind of dig out of our holes and see all our friends. So awesome to see you, brother. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll follow Anand on Twitter at Naduri NFL. Anand, love you, brother. We will see you soon, man.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Appreciate all right, there you go. Anand Naduri. All right, now you can email us, fwfemails@gmail.com. You can find us on X at Alex Dunlap NFL, at Cody Carpentier. Of course, we want to say thank you to our great sponsors, Poncho Outdoors, My Perfect Franchise, Texas Beef Traders, and Specs. Couldn't have a show without them. It couldn't have a show without you guys continuing to tune in, making the show just grow and grow and grow. I stay so I'm so impressed by our numbers, man. So yeah, thanks, Anand. Thank you, brother. He's backstage. He's like, I got to get out. You're like, all right, man, you can get out. Go eat, man. Go enjoy DFW. All right. But yeah, it's because of you guys continuing to come back. We put a lot of effort into the show. We want to make sure that we don't waste your time. We're going to get in, get out, talk football, and a lot of draft stuff coming up, Senior Bowl, Combine, all that, and hopefully more Texas stuff. We'll be back tomorrow for an abbreviated edition before the Penn State Notre Dame game. No final takes on Friday, but maybe we'll come back. It'll be a big victory Monday. So make sure you stay tuned here on the channel. The Outsiders right now, and then or when is that? Is that at 7 or is that at 8?
8:30.
8:30. So make sure and stick around for the Outsiders. And we have put the Prize Pick show tomorrow, man. Just stay locked here on the channel. Orange Bloods Live. All right. Love you guys. God bless you. God bless all of your families. For Cody, I'm Alex. We're done.